Welcome to the People, Planet, and Health podcast. I'm Tom Mills, your host today, along with Jay and Kat and Dr. Larry on Zoom. This is episode 6 of our podcast. We're going to be completing season 1. Today we're going to be talking about going back to the topic of integral ecology, the conjunction of everything. So we're going to explore the topics that we talked about in episodes 1 through 5. Plastics, water, air, food, and we're going to think about how those things have overlapped. So just want to thank the Archdiocese of Atlanta for helping us produce this podcast, and we've been doing this in educational collaboration with Georgia Gwinnett College. So Ivan, John, and Dante, who are behind the cameras today, who you're going to see in front of the cameras here in a little bit, thanks guys for helping us produce this first season. We're here at the beautiful campus of the Transfiguration Catholic Church here in Marietta, Georgia, and a great spot to finish out this season. So, Kat, I want to start with you. What were some of your takeaways, or perhaps one aha moment from season 1?
Well, before we talk about aha moments, let's talk about takeaways. Part of what's happened during this whole season is we had a new pope, and we have St. Francis' legacy of Laudato Si and caring for creation, and our new Pope Leo took up that call and actually doubled down on it. So what we're doing has real significance within the Catholic Church, and it's exciting to be doing something that is actually lifting that up to not just Catholics but all people of goodwill. As for the aha moment, there were a couple. I think the idea that some of the things we talked about around plastics were so unfamiliar to people that they almost couldn't believe it. And so I thought back and I thought, well, yeah, some of that stuff sounds like maybe we made it up or, something like that. And I want people to know that this is real factual scientific information that we're sharing, not necessarily our opinions or what we think is happening. And I think that's important for our viewers to know that this is solid information. It's foundational Catholic social teaching. And finally, as you said, integral ecology. Everything that we've talked about and we've done through these first 5 episodes have all come together where they're all interconnected. And I think we have to remember that. That has to be what we're all talking about, that when it comes to care for creation, it's all connected. And we're just helping find those places where it connects, sharing that. And our hope is that we got people talking.
Right.
So, and then identifying the disconnects too, that's also...
Yes.
So Jay, what are your thoughts on season 1?
As we came into this year, right, and the new Pope, we had Pope Leo, and he really has been making profound statements that really are fundamentally, as an American Pope, right, to say we really need to look at this connection between people, nature, and economy and be really thoughtful about what we do that. And that's what we've articulated over these last sessions, right, talking about what's this piece of things that we do for production and produce, right? What does that look like? But what is the context of that within nature, right? As we talked about food and water, and where's that intersectionality at, right? And then we had the third piece, which is around people, because we're growing food to feed people that's based upon ecology. We got to touch all these different areas that when Pope Leo came out and said, we really need to look at, within our economics, better serve people and nature. That's what we've been talking about. What does that actually look like? And the good news about that is we're already doing it, right? That's what we showed. People inherently see this connection, right? They may not always be able to articulate it, but they see it. And part of what we're trying to get the message out is keep doing what you're doing, but take it to the next level of saying, let's look at that more fundamentally and how we live with each other too, within the social constructs that we have, right?
And talk about it.
And talk about it.
And so you use the word social construct. Right. That's just a complex way of saying that we're in this together. Right?
Right.
This is a community.
Right.
It's why we gather in congregations. It's why we gather in like-minded groups of people, birds of feather flocking together. That's a social construct.
Right. And part of what I'm trying to do, and this is this is the elder guy, right? Been around a long time. And, and I call myself a recovering engineer, right? Because science and technology only takes us so far. If technology doesn't serve people, then it's no good. And I think it was Dr. Larry that really helped me think through this, that there's people that need to be part of this conversation that haven't been, that needs to be, because, we talk about sustainability and we talk about environmentalism, we talk about conservation. If you're not basing it on people, but we're basing it on just science and things that we call sustainability, then we're missing the point that it is about health. It is about people connected to each other. It's about how we live better together, right, in a divided country. And these are foundational to sustainability, and we got to explore that.
But think also about the fact that Jesus said to us, where two or more are gathered. So he was a part of the social construct from the beginning.
Right. And don't forsake gathering together as some have done.
Exactly.
So we have to be in community to solve these things.
Absolutely.
And the common,
Absolutely.
and the idea of the common good. I was on a call just before we came, and we were talking about, investments in carbon and what does that look like, and how does that go back into investors and shareholders, and then we had to come back and say, but it's not just about that. It's also, how do the people participate in this? How do we value that differently? And maybe we need to engage in a different conversation with investors and shareholders. Yes.
So Larry, let's push to you here. What are your thoughts on season 1?
Well, I have many. I'm going to start, I guess, where Kat did. What happened while we were doing this? And I think that one version of what happened or is happening is that we know we're in a world, Jay mentioned it, where it's very easy to get polarized. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of vilification of this or that. This has become, frankly, a technique, a strategy, a blood sport on the part of politicians and media and people in power around the world. That's not new. Humans have done that for a long time. I mean, some of the technology's new when you look at, the ability to stream video on social networks and things like that, or social media rather. But I think the human tendency, right, to get stressed, threatened, angry, divisive, that's not new. I think what is equally powerful to me during the time we did this is what the word that's been mentioned already before, which is this powerful, positive, gravitational pull of community. And I think it's very easy when we talk about these issues, environmental stewardship, care for creation, care for our common home, public health, these can easily become buzzwords that someone is happy to put in their meat grinder of divisiveness and start getting people whipped up and arguing about it. And that distracts us from what Kat talked about, which is our need to talk about it, to dialogue, right? To listen, to think. As I look at this from the health lens, we know more and more. And Mary asked me getting ready for the show, hey, what's one scientific breakthrough that I could talk about? We have so many technical scientific breakthroughs. It's ridiculous. Now, they're not all, able to turn into, you can do this every day in your family, or take this pill, or get this surgery, or, they're not all that simple. But the insight that science gives us goes back to the humanity that Jay talked about. In other words, and I talked about this throughout the shows, human health is something that's important to each and all of us at an individual level. And anyone who's been ill temporarily or chronically knows, wow, what an energy drain that is at best. Not to mention the sense of emotionally being adrift and separated from what healthy life is, that seems so easy and so for granted, right? So just it's there, and all of a sudden it's not. And so I think health, we talked about, and this is what sticks with me, is not something you can bottle and put in a cage and protect it with walls and barriers. Health is something that is in us and flows to us and from us, which goes to this idea of system thinking that I mentioned. So this idea of being stewards of community, our family community, our neighborhood community, our faith communities, our civic communities, our natural community, those aren't separate conversations. Those are overlapping zones of health. And the more we understand them, and the more we understand the value of health, which is kind of human capital, right? We talk about human capital, like how talented are the people you're going to hire or that you can hire. Human capital is health, right? And health capital is human. And so the more we find out about this, or at least the more I do as a physician, the more I'm really interested in how do we create the awareness that helps people understand how powerfully positive this is to build it, seek it, connect it, and how risky, dangerous, and costly it is to ignore it, or worse, to tear it down. And how do we make that tangible? Because my last thing that I'll say that I've learned during this whole process is how many good things are going on in the world right now, and they're growing and they're connecting. And next to that, there is very much a zone of apathy or ignorance or oblivion. Not us, don't have to worry about that. That doesn't involve me. And then there's a darker side. There are people that are actively trying to make this a bad thing, a naive thing. If you think about this, you must be one of those kind of harmful people. All those are distractions. So I guess, the take home for me is how do we build on the good, and how do we engage in that connection, that conversation, that dialogue that makes people say, okay, this is really a worthwhile conversation. Lots of ways to approach it, lots of pros and cons, lots of knowns and unknowns, but I'm in, we're in, let's go. Because humans are better together, not just when we're a community, but when we're creating. And I think if the folks online looked at that Yellowstone River cleanup, that started as a small idea. And the stats are impressive. On the positive side, I think they're up to an aggregate of something like 365,000 pounds of junk from the Yellowstone River. The sobering flip side is, why do we keep dirtying our river? And what is the cost of that? But the positive social momentum is not only do you have these college students not just doing this, but facilitating what is now a multi-times a year event. But you look at it, the energy in that event, not just the energy to pull a truck chassis out of the river, but the fun people are having and the connection and the community in real time is palpable through the video. And now businesses are piling in and saying, we'll give you gear, money, time, representation. So this positive snowball effect of community, I think, is really visible in that tangible example. And I see that happening literally all over the world. And I think probably my biggest take home from this is, how do we continue to just grow that community connection and connecting community around this idea of what healthy humanity looks like? That's probably enough for me as a starter, because I know we have other things to talk about.
There's a good summation, actually.
I think it also, he brought up a great point, and that was that this discussion from different voices, and the fact that we have a doctor, we have an engineer, we have a minister, that different people, different points of view, and that makes for very fruitful dialogue.
That was the whole point of this panel, was your diverse backgrounds from medicine, from EPA, Navy, you've seen the world, and then Kat, your work within the church and then with people. I think that it's the continuum we need to sit on to have the conversation. And I put myself in the communicator category.
Right.
I'm a content creator on YouTube, telling the story and spreading the story and using technology to reach more is an important part of the conversation as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. He's the one that went to Georgia Gwinnett College. Now he's running for the county, building community gardens. Put in literally 14 or 15 of them, right, that represent community. But when you talk to him, he's got this vision of hope and opportunity about how people can live in the, as a local government person, providing services that support building community, right? That was that idea of hope and opportunity. I'm hearing this from young folks, right? Do I go down the path of nihilism, which means I just do it for myself because I see no future, to one that we see Brandon that says, I see a future in my community. I graduated with my undergrad 4 years ago, and I've already built 14 community gardens that has brought cultural connections and people together in a unique way, as a mid-20s guy that sees it, right? Those are the stories we want to elevate. That's the hope we want to give for people to see that there are better ways to do this besides what's good for me today, because I don't see anything else that's good out there in the future. How do we look at that from people of faith as to what is good, what is hope, what is opportunity, and be able to move on that?
The scripture that says, consider all joy when you encounter trials of various kinds, right? And so in the midst of the struggle, which clearly the world, our nation, is in the midst of a struggle, God wants us to remember to find joy in the midst of that.
Yes.
So he's not saying minimize the suffering or ignore the pain, the weight of it, but in the midst of it, remember there's joy coming.
Right.
And then that, again, that in community, we can remind each other of that and make sure that we're not forgetting that their hope is not dead.
I think, too, not to forget that God calls us to be co-creators with Him. And as co-creators, that means we do have a responsibility to our common home, our one home that He's given us, the gift of earth and the gift of air and water and life. But we are called to be co-creators, and as co-creators, we have a responsibility to create well, to create sustainably, remembering that people are who we're creating for and with.
So my takeaway from season 1, I think Larry came from the Turtles and Junk, episode 4, water. They're using turtles as a long-living species within water systems that absorb the bad things that enter those systems, that they're an indicator of. Yeah. And I think what struck me about that is we look at integral ecology. God designed all of creation as a closed system. We are part of that system as people. And the system will tell us when we're breaking it. You know, like even something as simple as damming a river or leaving it free flowing, that has an impact on the system. And that was one thing that stood out to me about that interview, was that they're measuring these turtles in dammed systems and not dammed systems, and they can tell how those changes are impacting the system. I think about this, Jay, this legislation that just passed. I don't know if we want to go here.
The endangerment.
But the endangerment, the risk that we run as humans is, are we trying to do things that will damage this system? Are we having negative impacts on this integral ecological system that we live in? And what are those impacts?
You know, when you do policy, right, and they write regulations, it's all based on economics. And the economics is that you have to put a value to a human life that you compare to the, you know, if you call it the economic value of cost benefit, right? That basically said, we're going to set the value of a human life at $0. So what does that really tell you, right?
Wait a minute, did they really say that?
Yes. Yeah, it's in the New York
I
Times.
didn't know that.
So as we're doing that, it's much more fundamental. We're talking about integral ecology at a very gut level of complete disregard of any value. We already knew we didn't value nature, really, right? We extracted from it. Now we've been clear. You know, even people, if they write a regulation that says it's good for business, even if you harm people, that's okay.
Business wins.
Business wins, right? So I really want to come back to what Pope Leo charged us with this year, that we're not serving people in ecology and nature, and we're seeing it play out in decisions we're making, that I think as people of faith, we have a voice in that, and we have a choice that we can make. We're at that point, we need to make a choice about where do we want to sit on this. Where are we going to sit on this? Because I think we need to be on the right side of history, and we have a choice.
In that one specific issue, the church is very clear on the fact that the economy is meant to serve man, not man to serve the economy.
Right. And then we talk about health, right?
Yeah, this is interesting. And by the way, for those listening, whether it's, February 2026 or March 2027, you're listening to this, I want to emphasize that I think our perspective as a panel, and certainly mine as a physician, is actually not political at all. This is about the value system from which springs and toward which serves our community, right? So these things play out in our political arena, but it's not a right versus left thing. It's what kind of human community are we called to be? Do we want to be? And are we willing to be? So against that context, I just want to say when you say that the human life has zero economic value, you can actually make that argument at a sort of spreadsheet level, right? We're piles of water and cells, and we're not a pile of, gold, silver, or Benjamins. And you say, okay, well, that makes sense. I think what we have to call into question is what is our frame of reference, and what are the benefits and costs of such a monetary calculation to humanity? Does it take us where we want to go? Do we love our families because of the pile of money they represent? When we throw a retirement party for someone, or say goodbye to a favorite boss or a favorite teammate, or we look at someone's tombstone, or read a book about our favorite people, Abraham Lincoln, Harriet Tubman, whoever it is, right? Jesus, Gandhi. Are we citing their monetary value? Is that their historic value? Is that their present value? Is that their future value? The planet is an economy. The planet as an integral ecology is a vast time-spanning exchange of goods and services played out in the relationship between living things, not piles of coins. The currency is just a marker of what the vigor of those relationships are. So if you just forget all the things we're talking about here and just say all we care about is the exchange of monetary goods and services, that's an ecology in itself, and it depends on the vigor of those exchanges and the vigor of the relationships of the moving parts. And so people will say, well, heck, if you want a really good economy, you should have a diversity of businesses and a diversity of exchanges, and those things should benefit the whole. So what's interesting about this idea of calling humans zero value is that it misses the whole idea of what an ecology is, and it misses Pope Leo and Francis's and the last 6 popes, just to name the Catholic voices in the subject, of what the world is. The world is a series of intertwined ecologies: economic, biologic, physical, human, philosophical, right? That is what the world is. It's this vast network of relationships. And only insofar as those relationships can be intact and stable and continually creating, as Kat said, can it really be healthy. And only in that healthy kind of relationship matrix called an ecology or a community, they're the same thing, can the turtles be healthy or the humans be healthy. So we have the science to understand this. When you say that a human is zero value so that you can avoid the effects that real life are going to have on humans, you also cheat yourself out of defining the value of humanity in a web of relationships that includes all of us, extends far beyond us into the rest of the planet, and comes from the planet through us and through our economies. But every young person, every old person, everyone who has a family, everyone who teaches children, everyone who's a doctor, every human who cares right now has to say, not just who am I, but what part do I want to play? Do I want to be a creator and a connector and a builder? Do I want to be a future maker? Do I want to be an insurer of the present, a guarder of the present? Or do I want to be something else? And Jay already mentioned it. If we're after me, that's okay to a level, right? We all have to make sure we're healthy selves. But if you can't get into relationship and connection, you're not going to be a happy person. You're not going to be a healthy person. And ultimately, you will become a dangerous person. And we have to think about that at scale now.
To be clear, Jay was not saying that people have $0 value. The legislation, the new rule that is making that statement, I think it's to enable more money to be extracted from the process. Whatever they're doing to build something that has an impact on people, they're not considering the value of humans in that process.
Let me just add to that, because I think, Larry, you're really touching on something. And I'm seeing some convergence around this, right? You're seeing organizations make change, because I think the difference is, as you say, there's many economies, there's many ecology in many different ways. We're just used to seeing it in a certain context, right? And I think that's what's opening up. What you're seeing now is that idea of relational And relational capital is really being important for us to be able to live better together, right? And it used to be always, sustainability was always about science and policy and all that. And we're finally seeing that it's as much about relationships and what they call relational capital, which you can't buy that, right? That's not, you don't buy it in the market. It's what you got to build because of who and how you represent. And you're seeing organizations build skills around that now, right? You know, I've seen that. And I've seen, you know, Citizens Climate Lobby has now got what they call their bridge program, which is we need to talk how we talk to people differently. It's not about us being more right or we have the best science. It's how do we touch people in their identity, how they feel like they belong, who they are. When I keep thinking of my practice of Catholicism and what I do, that's the way I see it, right? It's, you know, me and Kat don't always get along, but we identify with each other.
Right.
We connect with each other. We see each other with the best of intent, and that's okay. And we work through that, right? But it's
Let me say
important.
this: you always get along. You don't always agree.
Right.
And I think
Correct.
separating those things is important because that can maintain community as fellow believers in a community.
Yeah.
But even if we don't always agree on the details.
Which is an interesting way for us to go back and look historically,
Right.
because century by century, even millennia by millennia, these issues of how people interact have always been there. The stories are told in our Bibles, in our Bible stories.
Right.
We know that the Pharisees responded so similarly to the way our governments and politicians do today.
Right.
So this whole thing that part of maybe what we're after is how do we get out of repeating the same issues over and over again and really take the time
Right.
and look for the solutions versus just continuing in that ongoing over and over again, dealing with economy, dealing with political issues. How do we fix the problems?
I think some of that starts by scaling down the community to a congregation, to a, say for example, St. John Newman Food Pantry. What is the sphere of influence?
Absolutely.
I cannot go to Washington and affect change.
Well,
Well,
I
I
would
can-
disagree with
well,
you. I
okay.
think you
Okay.
can, but
But would my time be better used to do that within my sphere of influence?
so
my energy.
who is the best? And one of the things I think about is our young people. And that's why I'm so excited to hear from the guys that have been behind the camera to talk about, we're sitting here saying this. I've advocated, I think we all have been on the steps of our Capitol or the federal Capitol and asked and done that type of work. But I'm interested to see what our young people think about how we advocate.
Well-
Do we do it in small community? Do we do it by going and talking to the politicians? Do we do both and? I think it'll be an interesting discussion to hear their side of things.
And here's a personal example for me. And one that's had a generational bridge, if you will. My father was an engineer, and he, in doing that, became an avid recycler. He was a runner, and he would pick up cans when he ran. But he also, being an engineer, he counted them. He also then within his church started encouraging people to bring their cans to church for him. And over the 10 years that he has done that, he has raised $21,000 for missions. So he took this litter that was sort of subversive to the integral ecology, the system, brought it back in and sort of made it holy, if you will. But that's something that I've been doing. I have a little recycling center at the office where people can bring me cans. I share that same message with the guys on my soccer team. Bring me your cans, and I'm going to donate that money that I get from the cans to a girls' home in Senegal to help them. It's a little bit of money. It's not a lot, but last year it was $400. That my little effort to gather aluminum to recycle that, to keep it out of the landfill because it's not being reused there, to keep it off the side of the road where it's being an eyesore and affecting the beauty of the community. Turning that into something positive, and there are other ways to do that as well.
But you're not. I love the fact that it's partly about cleaning up the environment and doing that, but it's partly about raising awareness. What you're doing is raising awareness. When we pulled into Transfiguration, they have a big glass recycling where people can bring their glass, which is very hard to recycle here in Georgia. And so one of the cool things is you've got that, but let's talk about not just you need to recycle glass, but what part does that play in the whole big picture of the ongoing taking care of creation?
So these are great examples of small things that people can do, and I don't want to discount that. But the question is, should we be producing that aluminum can or that plastic bottle to begin with? Are we just putting a Band-Aid on something that is ecologically unsound for now? It's a good place to start because
or giving people something they can do that makes them feel good.
it feels good to go out and buy another can, right?
Right.
You
I
see?
recycled, I'll go buy another one.
And that was exactly right. That was like, we do clothes donation so that you feel good to go buy another piece of clothes, right? So that's why I want to turn it back over to Larry, because Larry's been talking about his observation as a health provider of how we're seeing that be reflected in the human body, right? This idea of consumption, because we're changing individual behaviors to make people behave the way that makes them feel good, but maybe it's actually ecologically really disconnected, right?
So the Band-Aid can have value, but we should also look at why we need the Band-Aid.
Systematic fixes, right?
Both and.
Because, Larry, you can talk about right on the plastic. What are we seeing from, our production of plastic and what we're seeing in the body, right?
I'll start, I guess, with back to my turtles and junk thing. You may remember that we talked about water and air as to us, through us, and from us. That's kind of a nice motto to remember about things that drive health or things that drive unhealth. They're not confined to a box. And that to us, from us, through us idea means we're now firmly in the world of systems. And sometimes we hear the word systems, and I do a lot of work of this out of this podcast with a lot of different people. Systems means bureaucracy or this big, huge thing you can't move. It really just means how parts fit together to add up to something more. So all of us humans are, by definition, living systems unto ourselves. 340 trillion cells. That's massive. That makes getting 8 billion humans on the same page look pretty trivial, really, at the math level. But we're also systems together, right? A family is a system, an office is a system, a business is a system. These are human systems, which of course interlock with other systems on this planet. That's not a theory. That's the way the universe is designed. So that can get a little scary for people, but I think what it means is that you can't get out of this systemness if you want, right? You can throw away every aluminum can you find for the rest of your life. You can drink out of a metal water bottle for the rest of your life. You can eat only tofu and antioxidants for the rest of your life. You cannot get out of the web of relationships that you're part of. That can cause us all a little vertigo, right? And a little ay. Like Tom, you said, we can't go to Washington and change this. The reality is that the most powerful moving force in the human world is the consumer. And if you want to get a little less cynical about that, the most powerful human force in the human world is the animated community. So I think the challenge in front of us is, as Kat and Jay were talking, not to not recycle, not to not use a metal water bottle instead of a plastic one. It's to do those things and link them conversionally, which is what Laudato Si is all about. And it's what good faith communities challenge themselves to do, right? To walk a journey of conversion. We're not going to stay where we are, right? St. Paul, when I was a child, I thought as a child. Now that I'm an adult, I think as an adult. When we were a community in the 1900s, we thought like a 1900s community. Now that we're in the 21st century, we know that it's good to recycle aluminum. We know it's better to get more people understanding the life cycle of aluminum and plastic. We know it's even better to not invest in things that are toxic or harmful. We know it's difficult to change our economy. We know it's necessary. We can build a better economy. We can build a better world. We can create more opportunities. We can drive more innovation. We can drive more spiritual wholeness in our community. Small s, not dogmatic. These are all statements of optimism, but you can't get there until you understand that we're connected. So yeah, recycle your can. It's a good idea. Switch water bottles. It's a good idea. But if we stop there, we're not walking the conversional journey that isn't just endemic in our religious communities and not just Christian ones. This idea of conversional journey is embedded in all the world's major religions and in all sorts of indigenous religions that we know of and that we've frankly forgotten. It's also endemic in biology. All of us are the same person we were when we were born, and we are not. We no longer look like 6-week-old babies. We no longer think like 6-week-old babies, and yet our connection to who we are is very, very real. And this runs through our generations, which begs the question, what kind of people will we be now, alone and together, and what kind of future will we build and pass on? And that now is the question that is in front of us all the time. And that really, if you think about it, is a good thing.
And will we ground everything we're doing in the hope that Christ instilled in us?
Belief.
Good stuff. I'm excited about what we've discovered in these 6 episodes and in this overlapping discussion. We've looked at this season really of the things that impact around us. Mm-hmm. But we're getting at here is the power of our ability as a community to take action, to elicit change. And I think, Larry, there's a number, and I think it's 3%.
Yep.
If 3% of the population
Right.
Were to say enough, that's all we need to bring about change, substantive change. I think we can get there if we just expanded this group a little bit. Not our panel,
Yeah.
but those who are people of goodwill. And that's, I think, why Pope Francis said it was beyond the walls of the Catholic Church.
Absolutely.
It wasn't just Catholics, it was people of goodwill. Because I think one thing I've felt sort of within the sustainability community is that we can get to these things, these solutions, from a variety of worldviews. We don't have to have the same belief structure to say this improvement of the environment
Yeah.
is a good thing. We can all come at that from the Christian, from the Buddhist, from even the scientist, the person who says I'm an atheist. They can still see the benefit of a healthy environment, clean water, clean air, healthy food for everybody. I mean, we can get there with people of goodwill, and I think that was the brilliance of the Laudato Si, reaching out to that larger tent to say, get involved.
Well, it also goes to the thing that all people of goodwill, whether you're people of goodwill or not, you're still all part of one human family. We're it. There's one human family, and whether you're on board or you're fighting against it or whatever, we have to, that 3%, that can make all the difference. And as people of faith,
Right.
and part of that one human family, we actually have a responsibility to not just sit around and listen.
Yeah. The last thing I want to talk about a little bit is that as we get people to understand and see this and the systems that Larry talked about in a real way locally, this is not a vision of scarcity that we're talking about. This is a vision of how we actually can live way more fulfilled, right? Which we're called to be in communion with each other and communion with nature. It's not scary.
And less materials.
Right.
Yeah.
And it gets talked about as if we're
Running
arguing
out.
at this,
Yeah.
and it's this idea of a fight over, scarcity, and it's not.
There is enough. If we manage this system correctly, there's enough for everybody
Right.
to thrive, not just survive.
Right.
the people that are on a path to sort of subvert things, to define human value as zero in their quest for more money, the path that they're on is fruitless. They may make more money, but where they're headed is not fulfilling. It's hopeless, because Rockefeller said, when someone asked him about how much is enough, he said, just a little bit more.
And yet we can't take it with us.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, we can't take it with us. So is it about how much we have, or is it about how we live?
And in the end, right, we're all regenerative, right? We know where we're going. We're all going back to the earth, right?
That's right.
Come on.
So a real quick thought on season 2. We want to talk about things that we can do. As we talk about the value of kind of gathering in community, of recognizing it in a broader context than just one Band-Aid, this Band-Aid, that Band-Aid, let's look at it from a system standpoint, but then we can all take particular actions to make that happen. So season 2, we're going to be looking at how to get stuff done as we move forward in this amazing ecology, this system that God's created for us.
We want to lift up those people that are getting things done. So we really do want our listeners, our viewers, to tell us what you're doing. Yeah. Send us your short videos, your reels, your clips, whatever. Let us know what's happening, because we want to lift that up. If you can do it, somebody else might be able to do what you're doing as well.
If we do this, then we're showing people what these systems really are, and we can talk about that, because they're doing way more systems thinking than we give people credit for. We just got to help them see it.
Right. Larry, final thought?
Final thought. Wouldn't it be nice if these big scary things became wonderful things we gathered around and created more wonderfulness? The promise of biology is not death. It is endless, unstoppable life. The author of biology, what we call God, has the same promise. It's not a zero-sum game. It's not clutch on till you go over the cliff. It's create, 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 connect, 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 commune, commune, commune. And that's a forever thing. So wouldn't it be nice if we made that switch? So anyway, I look forward to hearing what people have to say to us and with us in this next season, because as we all said when we started, this is not about having, 4 older white people sit around and talk, in a closed conversation. We want to connect too. So I'm looking forward to hearing what the guys behind the camera say, because we've had a chance to hear from them throughout the season. Anxious to put the lights on them and hear. And I'm looking forward to hearing from more people, more places, more ideas in season 2. So.
And I think we have a beautiful model for this. The fact that Pope Leo is saying what Pope Francis put in place, I want to continue. Because let's be honest, these issues that we're talking about, we're not going to solve them. We're going to need the next generation and the generation after that and the one after that to really start to get to some of these more complex issues. We can start the process, we can educate based on what we know, sharing our knowledge to that generation. But let's be honest, I'm the youngest on this panel at 55.
Intergeneration.
And we really need the guys behind the camera to carry...
phase us out.
That's right.
Well, to make sure we're also speaking the same language and having the same goals. Because quite honestly, there are a whole lot of people like us that are having these discussions, and we're not taking into consideration what the younger generation wants and how they want to address and the issues. And so oftentimes we're saying all this, and I can hear, my daughters in the background going, yeah, that's nice, but we're not going to do it that way. And so it's that brings about, then again, the need for dialogue.
If you go down to Tallahassee, the Frenchtown community, right? They're the poorest zip code in the state of Georgia. But that community, there isn't one person that doesn't go without their needs being met. because the elders and the youth are connected to each other because they have to be, right? That's how you survive. You want to talk about the group that if things go in the crapper, that's going to be around while we go into dust, they will be here because they know each other and how to rely on each other to meet the needs, and can do so because they have been disconnected from these things anyway, and they have figured it out. And so can we.
That's the beauty of the design of God's ecosystem, right, is that it will allow people to live, right, and enable people to live and thrive, I believe, right, as well, even in the face of poverty.
That's what I'm saying, even in the face of poverty. Right. Yeah.
All right, so let's do this. I want to thank you all for your contributions, you too, Larry, for this season, for bringing your wisdom to this conversation, your life experience. And now I would like to hear from the captive audience of young guys who have been sitting here for all these episodes as well, the guys behind the camera.
Huge thank you to them, Tom, by the way, as we sign off. I mean, these guys have, as you know, been out there in the humidity, the heat, moved their gear inside, outside, put up with us for months and months now. So huge shout out to them. Really looking forward to their thoughts.
Let's do this. I'm going to clap my hands, and then the guys here are going to appear on the bench with me. So, but you might want to just wave goodbye.
Yeah.
This is the crew, all students or graduated students from Georgia Gwinnett College, where we started filming, and so Dante, Ivan, and John. So Ivan and John are both graduates. Episode 1 was Ivan's capstone project, which you got 100 on.
Absolutely.
Sweet. Dante, and you're in your junior year, so right. So all these guys were part of the media program. What these guys did in having to sit through all these episodes in their creation, you heard all the content. You heard our discussions. You heard what we cut too, and even though we didn't do a lot of extra editing on this project. So I would be interested in hearing sort of the answers to some of the same questions I asked our panel at the beginning of this episode. What were the major takeaways that you had, having heard from us, seen this process? So John, why don't you start? What was your main takeaway from this season?
I've learned a lot just through all the episodes that we've done, but I like today's episode where you guys are ending it, as far as where like season 2 is going to come in, where it's kind of covering like, now that we've talked about these things that are going on, what can I personally do like in my community? The big thing is like, what can I do? And I like that that's kind of where we're heading with season 2, because I feel like as an individual, like I've recycled and stuff before we even started the podcast, and when I do that, I'm kind of like, is this leading anywhere? Like, when you think of all the industrial waste, the environment is kind of actively being degraded. As one person, is my like effort actually leading to anything meaningful? The stuff we've covered during the episodes about like the community gardens and like the stuff that's going on in like individual church communities and stuff like that, it makes me feel a lot more like proactive. It's encouraged me to go and do more stuff like in my community to improve things, because it feels like we're all invested in improving things. It feels like that's kind of like the beginnings of an actual movement that could like cause meaningful change. So I'm glad that like now that we've kind of covered what's going on, we're moving into more like proactive territory. I think that's interesting to me.
So Ivan, I remember in episode 2 when we were talking about microplastics, and Kat mentioned that when you take a plastic bottle lid off, the friction between those 2 layers of plastic actually creates some nanoplastics that then you drink. That was something that you were like, whoa.
Yeah.
Can you remember that?
Yeah,
that
I remember that. I had to just cut out plastic bottles completely because I can't drink that anymore. But kind of to piggyback off of what John said, was just the thing that speaks to me most about it is just as an individual, what can I do? I feel like recycling is not something that I usually have done before in the past. It's not something my family's done either. Kind of opened me up to like just talking about that with them. We need to be recycling. This is very important to do. What can I do as an individual, and like also like in the community I really liked what you said about, I think it was your father, about what he did with the church. It was like killing multiple birds with one stone. That was mostly what I got from it.
That's good. So Dante, what are your thoughts on what you've learned from season 1 here?
I mean, I've learned a lot. I would say my biggest thing that I was focused on was the microplastics. I told my mom about the plastics thing, told my girlfriend about you can't have your recycled stuff in a bag. I actually did not know that, and she usually puts it in a bag in the, recycling thing, so I told her not to do that anymore.
Keeping your plastics loose so they can be sorted. Yeah. Good.
So I've been more cautious about like the food that I eat. Yeah, I mean, just trying to stay more aware, I guess.
Build awareness.
Thanks to you guys, I'm definitely more aware now.
Yeah, I do think that season 1 was definitely more about building awareness. Now that our awareness is heightened to the potential risks, to the opportunities to make good decisions, better decisions for what we eat, that we want to give people the ability to take action. So season 2 will focus on some of those community-based actions we can take in community with others. I think our awareness happens first internally. What can I do? But you all gave examples of how you can then expand upon that. You told your mom, you told your girlfriend, you educate your family how they can recycle. Those are multiplying effect. You recognize sort of the value of doing things in a church community, for example, or any community, a group of people. All those efforts, if they're small, even if they're small, are magnified and multiplied. And I do think as we move towards change, that's going to be really important. And Jay brought something up interesting in this episode as well, is that sometimes we think about the Band-Aid. Recycling aluminum can is a good thing. However, should we be drinking out of aluminum? Should we be drinking out of plastic bottles? So sometimes the recycling, while important to keep these materials as they're created out of the environment, put them back in potential reuse situations, should we be looking at better containers for liquids? And you can expand on that, and I think so. Season 2 hopefully dig into some of those questions of, yes, this Band-Aid is something we should do right now, but let's look back at why the cut was there, why the rip in the ecosystem was there, and evaluate a solution based on fixing that problem versus just continually doing the Band-Aid. So often we buy the next can. There is a larger issue to think about. Was there something that we didn't see?
I feel like that's what's being addressed in the next season, which I like. But I feel like that's the only thing that I'm like, I hear about all this stuff, or like water reclamation and all these things. Like, this is an issue, and I'm like, what can I do like meaningfully? And I feel like that's the main thing that like I want to see addressed, is like, what's the next steps, basically.
Yeah, that's good. Guys, any other thoughts?
Basically, yeah, same thing that he's saying as well.
Yeah. So I think sometimes it's hard to know what is missed, what is not said, when you're still kind of in that learning phase of things, that building awareness. But I think what's interesting to me, and I think, going back to my comments on what I heard in Larry's interview about the turtles, we believe God designed this holistic, beautiful system, that when the system is broken, it will show us. It will reveal, like erosion, for example, or chemicals in water that go on forever. The system will show us the problem if we look. I think sometimes in our lives, and with all this technology and all this distraction, we don't take the time to look and see. And I think if we, if you look at an urban stream that's got deeply incised banks, you figure, okay, how was the environment around it impacted to now create this problem with rainwater, stormwater runoff, which is now carrying pollutants as well. So that's one example. There are lots of examples. So I think just being observant, and I think what I heard from all you guys was your eyes were opened to something or to a broader issue. So I think my encouragement to you is stay observant. Look around you, look at something different, and that's going to maybe point you to what you can do to affect change going forward. Any favorite moments? Top of Stone Mountain, that was fun.
Yeah,
That was fun.
yeah.
But I will say my favorite moment was actually just getting to work with you guys. And I feel like that short that I had done
Yeah.
for you guys, and I did it for the school as well, but it helped me learn things about my school that I didn't even know. I didn't know that they had a garden that was just open to anybody, that anybody can just walk in there and help or take what they need. And I feel like that benefited me.
Yeah, that's good.
I think that actually applies to all three of us too. It's like, I don't think any of us, we all go to the same school. I don't think any of us knew that that was even a thing.
No.
I think it kind of applies in a broader sense too, where it's like, you know, we're not aware of all the stuff that's going on, like the programs and stuff that are in our communities that are trying to make a difference anyway. So there was all sorts of stuff that I was like, I had no clue what was going on. Like, even that garden at Rose Jordan, like I'd walked past there a couple of times. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know like it had any kind of purpose other than just being there, you know.
Yeah, you didn't realize you could go have a garden there yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those opportunities are all around us. And I do think that we hope to uncover some of those for you in season 2. For you guys, but also you as the viewer. That's our hope as we enter the second season. So hopefully your awareness has been heightened as we've discussed these topics here in season 1. And we hope that you'll stick around and join us for season 2. And also, you can share this content with others. Let us help you expand your community, build your community as you seek to live more sustainably as well. So thank you so much for watching season 1 of the People, Planet, and Health podcast. Thank you to the Archdiocese for helping support this content. Thank you to GGC, Georgia Gwinnett College, for lending us some amazing media guys who got some great experience in the process and learned some things as well. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in season 2.
Thank you, sir.
Beautiful.